Facts Verse presents. This English island is riddled with subterranean tunnels that hide dark secrets. Drake's Island is a little under 7 acres, and despite its small size, it has a very rich history. It's located at the north end of Plymouth Sound, and it was once an essential part of the city's defenses. In its heyday, it was designed to prevent England's enemies from entering the country by water. Much of the island's history has been chronicled, however, there are still people who wonder about the tunnels. The island wasn't always known as Drake's Island. In 1135 it was called St. Michael's Island because there was a chapel on the island that was named after St. Michael. When the chapel was rededicated to St. Nicholas, the island was renamed then as well. It kept the name St. Nicholas until the end of the 1500s when people started calling it Drake's Island. It was named after the famous seaman and slave trader Sir Francis Drake. Drake journeyed to faraway places. He was the second person to ever circumnavigate the Earth by himself. He started his journey in 1577, and 3 years later he ended his journey, and then he became a vice admiral in the English Navy. In the end, he chose Plymouth to be his England base. Drake's Island played an essential part in the English Civil War. When Plymouth pledged its allegiance to Parliament, it left them under attack for years. The people in the city used Drake's Island as a refuge for the parliamentary navy. They were able to sneak in and out under cover of night for supplies. Eventually, the parliamentary forces prevailed and the conflict ended. When things were quiet, the locals found a new purpose for the island. King Charles II had the structures on the island restored, and it became a prison. He left many of the political dissidents there to die. One of them was Colonel Robert Lyburn, who signed off on the death sentence of King Charles I. In 1780, Drake's Island went through yet another overhaul. All the structures on the island were torn down to make room for new defenses. They added a new battery and artillery to protect the entryway into Plymouth Sound as well as all of the rivers that fed into it. During the 19th century, more work was done on the island for protection purposes. On the south side of the island, the military installed over 20 9-inch guns. During both of the World Wars, Drake Island had a new purpose. Soldiers were stationed on the island at minefield control posts. From that position, soldiers could remotely blow up any mines that were left in the Sound if the enemy managed to get too close. When World War II ended, Drake's Island was still overseen by the UK's military, but not forever. About 10 years after the war ended, the government decided it no longer needed Drake's Island for defense. It took about 7 years for the military to leave Drake Island altogether. When they removed all of the weaponry, the Plymouth City Council leased the island for another purpose. They wanted to create an adventure facility for children called the Adventure Center. It remained open until the spring of 1989. When the facility closed, the City Council removed all the materials on the island. They also gave up the lease, which meant the government was again in control of the island. 7 years after Adventure Island closed, the Crown Estate decided to sell the island to the highest bidder. The initial value was $235,000, and in the end, a businessman named Dan Macaulay agreed to pay almost twice that amount. He wanted to turn Drake's Island into a hotel complex. Unfortunately, his plans were blocked. Today, many adventure seekers and history buffs will visit the island. It's remained untouched for years, and many of the structures still remain. This English island is riddled with subterranean tunnels that hide dark secrets, and that's what's drawn people to the island. The stories associated with the tunnels are said to be stories made up by mischievous soldiers who were stationed on the island. Nobody knew for sure if they even existed. There's no financial records or contracts to prove that they were actually built. Finally, though, after some exploration, it was discovered the tunnels do exist. But nobody knows why. Many believe they were dug during the Civil War, World War I or World War II. They're said to have been a secret way to connect the military structures. But again, that's just a guess. In 2018, the island was again put on market. It's still on market, which means that it's uninhabited except for the groundskeeper who knows the place like the back of his hand. He's even taken people on tours of the tunnels, which is pretty incredible. Would you want to own and live on an island? Tell us in the comments and subscribe for more.